This is the Christian Men's Illustrated Podcast. My name is Jeremiah Johnson. The election is officially over, and we predicted it right. So all of the Christian Men's Illustrated guys, myself, Greg Walden, Jake Waters, we predicted Donald Trump would get the dub, get the win, and he did. So shout out to him. We were correct. We were on the Trump train, the three of us, and it happened. So, there's so much that you can take away from podcasts, articles. So Christian Men's Illustrated, we want to give our take on everything that happened via the election. But my top takeaway is simply this, is that new media won, legacy media loses. And this was my biggest interest. Obviously, interest in Donald Trump and Kamala Harris and who's going to win. Yes, that's the main thing. But this underlying big issue, which I really wanted to see flesh out, is all these podcasts, all these YouTube channels, are they really going to make a big difference? I have a podcast, like making videos. I'm a podcast junkie, and we are now seeing the explosion of podcasts and a lot of influential people taking this independent route. So for example, we know Joe Rogan, he's on top of the mountain, right? I mean, everyone's looking up to him, and he's just whatever deal. He signed a $200 million deal. I tell my wife, it's like, listen, if you don't think podcasts are popular, long form podcasts are popular, just look at Joe Rogan. The guy's making 3-hour podcasts, millions and millions of dollars. But then we have other ones that are like, one that interests me and fascinates me individually in terms of the political movement is like Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly was on Fox News. she had credibility with mainstream media. Now she goes independent. She's got, I don't know what it is. You have to look at her various numbers, but it's, 2, 3, 4 million subscribers on her YouTube channel, etc. And then you have like Valuetainment, PBD, and you have all these podcasts. But my big question is like, is it really going to make a difference? And whose voice is going to carry out? Because we know the legacy media was presenting a picture of their perspective. Obviously, they're pro Kamala Harris. This isn't, you can't hide that the legacy media was, with the exception of Fox News, was clearly behind Kamala Harris. And then we saw Trump had to, where'd he go? I mean, he went on Tucker. He went on Valuetainment. He went on Megyn Kelly. He goes on Joe Rogan. And so he goes on all these podcasts. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, when I look at the subscriber numbers, when I look at if you go to Spotify, for example, you can look at the top podcast on their list, top 100 podcasts, and a lot of those are conservative-based podcasts. I'm like, okay, but I appreciate it. I appreciate seeing your influence and all your subscriber numbers and influence numbers, podcast numbers, etc. But is this going to equate to truly making a difference? And I think the definitive answer is yes. And so going forward, now I'm not of the mindset that legacy media is just going to die. I mean, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, these have millions of dollars flowing into their stations, their television programs, etc. So I don't think it's like the death, but I do think American culture is significantly losing confidence in mainstream media. And then also the rise of podcasts and independent sources of information is dramatically increasing. And I hey, I'm a Christian Men's Illustrated, the podcast. I definitely praise God for people like Joe Rogan, people that are really neutral, that are just trying to present truth and varying sources of information to the public people. And although I'm nowhere near the level of Joe Rogan or something like that, I'm grateful that, I can do my own research now and in my sphere of influence can present it to people. And here's my take on things. So that really was my big takeaway from this past election, is that new media wins. And so this is going to really, I think, change things up as we head into the future. And we're going to start seeing politicians, when it comes to elections, getting onto these podcasts, wanting to connect with Joe Rogan, wanting to connect with people where they can get their message out to more independent sources of information, influencers, podcasts, etc. So I guess we say congratulations from Christian Men's Illustrated. We say congratulations to Donald Trump and the running of the race on behalf of Kamala Harris, and we picked it, so we were right on that one. I know a lot of people picked Donald Trump to win, but I think with my research, which I do research our shows and read various articles, and I try to, like for example, on the night of the election, I looked at New York Times. I was Fox News and MSNBC. They were really varying in their predictions and their count numbers. I looked at New York Times. That's a liberal, kind of more left source. But anyway, I do try to do my best here on the Christian Men's Illustrated podcast to give you guys accurate information and what a election it was. And now going forward, the podcasters like us, I encourage you guys to start a podcast. We are beginning to take over the world. But I think it'll be interesting. What I will find fascinating in the future is will they welcome these podcasters into debates in some of those type of things. Like how awesome would it be if Joe Rogan led one of the presidential debates, or, they just kind of somehow integrated more of these podcasters that have significant influence. I just heard, I think is over 100 million views, Joe Rogan's podcast with President Trump. Anyway, shout out to New Media, shout out to the podcasters, and please, as we are building this podcast and this YouTube channel, Christian Men's Illustrated, would you subscribe, stay connected with us, and we look forward to our next upcoming podcast with all three of us. We'll talk to you later.